Welcome back, everybody. This is the second of 3 videos designed to help Christian guys get ready to date, lead, and ultimately marry a godly woman. So in last video, we took a look at 4 key areas Christian guys are struggling. And then I also pointed you to a simple assessment tool I've created to help you know which one you need to focus on. And then offered some practical steps to actually move forward. So this time, I want to really zoom in on the area of sexuality. It's an area where practically every guy is struggling. And so I want to offer some help, some encouragement for you. And to do that, we'll take a look at the 3 levels of lust and how to overcome them. And I'm so excited about this video because uh, you really can't move toward healthy dating relationships and marriage without experiencing at least some solid progress in this area. And I really want that for you. So when you make some progress, there's freedom, and we learn to value and treat women like God does. And that's a huge part of getting ready for healthy dating relationships and ultimately marriage. So let's jump in. All right. So over the last year or two, I've done some research with 30 or so Christian guys, just having extensive conversations with them, guys who want to get married, and just trying to figure out, hey, what are your challenges? What are you wrestling with? And can you guess the one thing literally every single guy was wrestling with? Yep, sexual sin. So if you're watching this, you're not going to be surprised. It's probably a struggle for you. And honestly, temptation is literally inescapable. And a lot of Christian guys are really struggling with this. All right. So, for example, just some quick stats here. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. It's also more than the major television networks in the United States. So pretty amazing. And then nearly 70% of guys who go to church watch porn on a regular basis. But I mean, honestly, you don't need stats to tell you that, right? You already know it's a temptation. So I want to give you guys some credit. If you're watching, you're probably already, you want to honor God, you want to honor women, and you want to get ready to date, lead, and marry a godly woman. That's why you're watching. So at the same time, it's not easy. It's anything but. So at the same time, what do you do about sexual sin? How do you overcome that? So typically, uh, typically our approach is kind of focusing on do's, or rather on don'ts, kind of on the negative side of things. Things like all these rules, internet filters, avoiding certain shows, getting in hardcore accountability with other guys, things like that. So, when we talk about long-term success, you need to go beyond just the cold shower, right? Um, all the things that we took a look at, the internet filter on your phone, those are good things, even necessary things, but you're never going to defeat sexual sin and lust long-term if that's our approach. So in this video, we want to talk about something that will give you longer term success with God's help. So yeah, just said all that. All right, so let's take a look at something called the pyramid of lust. We want to address sexual sin and lust on 3 levels so that we can deal with it not just at the surface, but at the roots. And so you can kind of see where we're heading here by giving that a quick look. And I just want to give a disclaimer. I'm stealing this from John Bettler. He's a Christian counselor, and a great article he wrote on this. If you want to read the article, you can just Google John Bettler and Pyramid of Lust. All right, so we're going to take a look at a case study a little bit later on, and then you'll have a chance to download a worksheet that will walk you through this pyramid so you can really gain some traction over sexual sin and lust in your own life. Cool? All right. So let's start at the top of the pyramid, sort of the most surface, obvious level, and take a look at the lust object. And it's straightforward, right? These are just the things that you're attracted to, that you're lusting after. Uh, there's temptation here. And it's, pretty obvious stuff. It's things like porn, shows that are suggestive, but it could also be, more subtle stuff, things that you might see as you walk around, a person at work, even your church. It can just depend on the person. But for the most part, it's pretty obvious. If you just think about it for a few minutes, you'll know what those things and temptations are for you. But in each case, and this is the key, uh, the things that you're tempted to lust after are typically depersonalized for you. It's turning something, really someone, into an object for your benefit. And the truth is, we're all sadly capable of that. And and I'm sure that if you're watching this, that's not who you want to be. All right, let's go down into that mid-level of the pyramid. And this is where we're talking about relationship lusts. And this is less obvious because it's typically unseen. So uh, when we think about sex, we know that it was created by God to be enjoyed in the context of total commitment, in the context of a whole person relationship. So think about Adam and Eve, right, in Genesis 2. God doesn't tell them, he doesn't create them and tell them to just hook up casually. He gives them the gift of sex, but it's in this context of a whole life together, and in the context of a total commitment to each other. And so at this level, we're asking ourselves, what do you want out of relationships? So actually, let's go back. So some examples could include, do you want to play it safe in relationships, or do you prefer risk and adventure? Do you tend to get really close to people, or do you tend to avoid them? Do you see relationships as kind of like an answer to all your dreams, or are they probably just going to be another big disappointment? So what do you want out of relationships? That's the key at level 2. And then level 3, at the bottom of the pyramid, are these life-meaning lusts. And it's even less obvious here because we're looking at the deepest parts of who we are. And these are like God replacements, they're idols. The deepest desires, what we want the most. And honestly, we're often not even sure, what that is. And so we're looking at life in general here, zooming out. And the key question is, what makes life meaningful or work for you? So it ultimately involves what we believe about God. And typically we'll find some lies here that we're practically believing about Him, distortions in our relationship with Him, even if we believe the right things theologically and on paper. And so even though this is the hardest area to address, it's also the most important because it's at the root of things. And if we deal with this, we'll deal with the dysfunction that is driving our struggles with sexual sin. Okay, so it's kind of like mold, you know. Imagine you're cleaning one day, you notice mold, maybe in the back of your closet, along with some old socks, maybe some ramen noodles, and how would you fix that, right? You could grab some soap and water. It would look better, you know, be decent maybe for a week. But a better solution would be to grab some bleach, maybe some heavier duty chemicals, scrub really hard, and it would look a lot better for a lot longer. But it would still eventually come back. And so the best solution, the one that we wouldn't want to do but have to do, we really got to rip that part of the wall out, replace it with some new drywall, fix it up, paint it, to really deal with the problem. It's much more costly financially and with our time, but it's the deepest solution. And it's kind of like that with sexual sin. We're ultimately aiming to address the problem at its roots and experience long-term victory. So at the same time, we really want to address each of those 3 levels, but understanding that we want to do that remodel approach to get the long-term results. We've got to deal with our hearts. All right. So you might be thinking, great, that's theoretical, awesome, but what does it look like in real life? So let's take a case study. We'll call him Peter. He's a young professional. Um, and, he's someone you can probably identify with. He's active at his church. Um, he's smart, he's driven, he's got his life together, at least it seems like it. He's fun, social, you would love hanging out with him. But he also has a high pressure job with a really demanding boss, tight deadlines. He's on a team that never seems to have enough time or resources. The boss is critical, but rarely willing to roll up his sleeves and help Peter with the challenges. And he's just got more and more pressure to take on lots of responsibility. And he's usually unappreciated even when he does a great job. And so, honestly, at the end of the day, he's pretty much had it. He just wants to blow off some steam. Might have a couple beers, and he finds himself giving into softcore porn. Shows and movies that tempt him, and then he struggles with masturbation a couple times a week too. And it's not always predictable, but recently he's discovering that the hardest days are the ones where he's struggling at work, where it's not going well, and that's when he's usually going to fail if he does. So that's kind of that top level of the pyramid, the lust object level. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper in his life and ask, what does he want out of his relationships? And so if we were to look at Peter's life, he's got this theme of wanting to keep life safe and easy in his relationships. For example, he hates it when clients or coworkers don't do what he wants them to, or when his boss or colleagues question one of his decisions. He just gets really annoyed when someone or something gets in his way or starts to introduce tension. His parents, similar thing there. So his parents, they can be annoying. That starts to bother him. He wants to just kind of keep his distance from them when they get difficult. But similar with women that he's dating. When one of them asks him a question, maybe about his past that he doesn't really like, he can start to create distance and lose interest in the relationship. He's got a few casual guy friends, but even there, it's kind of like, hey, let's have fun, go hiking, grab a few drinks, watch football. But he doesn't really want to go deep with them. All right, so let's head down to this deepest life meaning level. And here we're asking, what does he want out of life? What's going on with he and God? So, he's got the right theology. He was raised in the church. He knows the gospel up and down. There's nothing off there. But if you could kind of do an MRI of his heart, you would see that he doesn't trust God to protect him in his everyday life. So his parents were divorced when he was younger, and he never really processed that or got over it. So he felt like he couldn't trust the most important people in his life, and he's kind of brought that with him into adulthood. And so he'll try to protect himself, but the cost is he doesn't get close to others. So, yeah, he just protects himself by keeping it safe. All right. Okay. So, what if you were Peter's friend? What would you do to try to help him? Well, personally, where I would start is by starting with his busy days, because that's where he's failing and struggling most often. Peter met with a counselor, got some good input, and they decided that if he's in a bad place at the end of his workday, he's going to do two things. So he's not going to drink, because then he tends to make bad decisions, including going online and kind of getting in trouble there. So he's going to stay away from drinking and the internet on those stressful days at work, because he knows that's a trigger. But he's also going to replace that He'll text a friend just saying like, "Hey, rough day. Can you pray for me?" And then he'll go to the gym instead of going home, where he's probably just going to fall into temptation. So this is the kind of like put off, put on strategy that Paul talks about in Ephesians. And I think it's a good idea too. Like Peter and the counselor decide together, they're going to use scripture at kind of each level of the pyramid because scripture is powerful, right? Hebrews says it's like a double-edged sword, able to protect us, kind of get at the deepest parts of who we are and help us win those battles. So the verse that Peter settles on here, he's going to watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. For the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so on these tougher days, he's going to watch and pray. He's going to be heads up and flee from temptation. Okay, so how about this second middle level of the pyramid? So remember, Peter's theme has been to keep it safe, take it easy, that kind of thing. If you ask him to get vulnerable or to be sacrificial, he's kind of going to be like, peace out, move on. But the gospel calls Peter and really all of us to a different and better story. Jesus in the incarnation, he leaves the comfort of heaven, he becomes one of us, and he makes himself vulnerable to the point of death at the hands of those he created. And so his extreme sacrifice and the security that creates in our relationship with him really allows us to bend that toward others. And so, yeah, even if others reject us, it's going to be okay because God is always going to accept us in Christ. And so here, yeah, so the incarnation and the cross both give us a good reason to not keep it safe, to not take it easy. But the verse Peter settles on here is Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Finally, let's take a look at this third bottom level of the pyramid, life meaning lusts. Okay, and so here, we've seen that Peter needs to grow in practically trusting God and in God's protection in the context of his relationships. So Psalm 46:1 is the verse that Peter chooses here. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way. And so over time, as Peter's trust in God grows, the fears that he's struggling with in relationships will get smaller and smaller. It may not be linear, probably be some ups and downs, but that's where he's heading. All right. So I want to turn it back to you guys. Hopefully that gives you an example of how the pyramid can go beyond just the surface temptation and get to those deepest issues underneath it. And again, it's important to address all three, but we especially want to get to that deepest level. So let's talk about you guys for a second. First, do you need to engage or re-engage this issue of lust? I can't tell you how many times I've talked to guys where they know it's an issue and they just won't deal with it, for months, for years, and just kind of make peace with their struggles. And so you may be fighting, right? But mainly losing right now. Maybe you're doing pretty well and just need to keep going. Or maybe you're also good. You may be struggling, but you also know somebody who needs some help. So basically, regardless of where you are, I want to encourage you guys to grab this free worksheet that I've put together. It will walk you through the pyramid and it'll help you figure out your next steps at each level so you can gain real freedom. And I'm really excited for you to do that. You can grab the worksheet either in the email that came along with this video, or if you just watch a few more moments until the end of the video, you can grab the link there. In John 13:37, Jesus said, "Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." And I'm excited for you. I want you to be blessed. God's Spirit is with you. He will help you do the things that we've talked about so that you can get ready for dating and ultimately an awesome marriage. So again, grab the worksheet, work the worksheet by using the link on the screen and also at the end of the video. And then I'll see you again next time for our final video in the series. So in that video, we'll talk about why it's so important for guys to have a clear but also flexible plan to help them as they get ready for dating and marriage. And we'll also talk about exactly what the 4 key elements of that plan are. See you soon.